everybody, and welcome to Yeah, We Read It. We are hot, hot, hot into our ninth season. My name's Laura. I'm one of your
My
hosts.
name is Meggie, and I am the other host.
And this is our John Green season. And something that's really special about our John Green season is that we are bringing on a very special guest for each and every one of these episodes. This week we read Will Grayson, and joining us is my partner, Nick Olson. Hey, Nick.
Hello, so happy to be
What
here.
an exciting time to be
Yay! You're
alive.
exciting time to be alive. We all plowed through this 300-page book that's written by John Green and David Levithan about two boys named Will Grayson who cross paths and their lives are changed forever. I don't know if I could go that far, but like they just kind of have an interaction and things happen.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like forever feels pretty permanent in high school, so maybe right now it's gonna change. It's gonna be a memory they have in the
Yeah.
future.
It's true. They did make some progress, though, and I would hope that they don't go backwards.
That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah. So this book gets a little confusing because there's obviously two people with the same character. I would think we'd all agree that we would call the first Will that's mentioned Will 1, and then the second Will that's mentioned Will 2. Does that sound good for everybody?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really good. I know. I was thinking about that. I was like, how are we gonna differentiate to our audience which Will is Will?
Yeah. I know in my notes I just kept going Will 1, Will 2. So I think that would work for everybody.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
So I guess without further ado, wait, also I have to ask this before we dive in. Nick, you have read this book before.
Yes, I read this when I was in high school. I think when I was 16, and I really enjoyed it. I'm not a huge reader,
Hmm.
but yeah, this book actually did it for me then, and it kind of did it for me again.
Yeah, I remember when I first read this book that I didn't like it very much. So I was kind of excited to give it another chance. Meg, did you ever read this book?
No, my John Green journey stopped at Fault in Our Stars. So this is
That's
uncharted
fair.
territory for me. I'm
Yeah.
excited
Okay, well,
to figure out this
a
and
little bit of everything
whatever's
going into this
next.
episode then. Shall we say become Will Graysons ourselves and dive in?
What if we switch places?
Switch
Freaky
places.
Friday.
This book is
It never
this book is not
happened.
about switching places, which is kind of a bummer. Maggie said that to me, like in through text when they were reading it, and I was like, "Shoot, I really wish they would have switched places, but they didn't."
I
Um,
know.
so let's digest this. So we are introduced to Will number one, Will Grayson, and he's just like a normal guy. His best friend is Tiny Cooper, who is actually described as just being very large and very gay. We get a little
Yep.
tidbit about how they became friends, and we learn that Tiny's a little extra, and he falls in love very quickly and all of the time. So Tiny is now lamenting to Will one, "Hey, buddy, bestie, I'm in love yet again."
Yeah, I love that Tiny's only attributes are gay, fat, and kind of like Elton John. Like it's like he seems like he's really into being a fabulous gay.
Yeah.
Tiny has some other friends who are Will's friends by proxy, Gary, Jane, and Gary's boyfriend Nick.
Also,
And
RIP
those
to
are
be
his
named
friends.
Gary in high school. That kind of sucks.
Oh my God. I know. Can you imagine?
Nick, I
So
don't get this a
Will,
lot. Oh,
no, no, go
sorry, go ahead,
ahead.
Meg. I was gonna
I was just
say,
gonna keep
Nick said,
going.
I don't
No,
get this
no,
a
say
lot, and
it.
I don't think Maggie gets this a lot either. Is it weird whenever you come across like pop culture things or media pieces that have your name in them?
Oh, I'm very used to that.
Okay, yeah.
I was just happy it wasn't like some douche nozzle because usually Nicks depicted in the media are, I mean, they're really cool like me, but they're super overconfident and kind of mean to people.
There you go, folks.
Oh, Nixar? I feel like Maggie pops up in I'm a Child. I think in every single
Yeah.
media. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Laura's just kind of pop up in weird ways, and that's all I'll say about that. But sorry, Maggie, you were saying that they
No, no,
are
no.
going out with Tiny's friends.
They're going out with Tiny's friends. Will's only friends are Tiny's friends, and Will doesn't really have any friends anymore. I mean, Will's like one of those guys. He doesn't have any friends anymore, and he boldly says it's because of defending Tiny Cooper's gayness, and we're expected to kind of applaud him for
Yeah.
that. But he's got no friends outside of these people, and that is who he's hanging out with.
Oh, and Tiny's also on the football team. That is a detail that is glossed over. Like that's how we get to the third dimension with him, I think, is that he's also plays sports.
Mm-hmm.
But they're gonna go to the hideout in Chicago, which is a place that no longer exists. And they're gonna go
Does it
see
not?
neutral.
No,
I
it does.
Oh really? I thought it shut down.
So actually, right after I read that chapter, I saw in one of my friend's stories that they played a show there just 2 weeks
Oh,
ago.
then never mind. Maybe they just took a little hiatus and then they came back.
Yeah, because I know they had that drama recently, so I was wondering if
Yeah.
anything ever resulted in like any major overhaul to the system. But I guess it's still people are getting booked and busy at the hideout.
And speaking of people who are getting booked and busy at the hideout, the band that they're going to see, Neutral Milk Hotel, is not booked at the hideout. It's some other horrible band. And they're not having a good time with that. And then to add insult to this injury, Tiny gets dumped via Facebook status at the show. And immediately, end of the world. He's crying. He's getting drunk. Will one decides he's going to be an ally and get drunk with his bestie, and Jane's going to have to drive them home.
Really sucks too, because they went through all of this effort to get in because Will didn't have a fake ID. So
Oh my God,
Tiny stages
yeah.
this thing where Gary like punches him in the face and Will sneaks in. So to go in and then see a Facebook status where someone was like, don't want to ruin a really good friendship. I think what Tiny and I have is really important. And call me by name on Facebook. Leave me out of it.
Yikes. Yeah.
Mhm.
And also, Will One's thing is that one, he's not gay, but also the only girl that's paying attention to him, she's not pretty enough for him. So says multiple times that Jane has curly hair and she's fine looking. Like that's the entire like energy he has towards her.
Oh my god, that is so funny that I completely skipped that, but for some reason I inherently pictured her as a redhead, so that's what my bias is telling me when I didn't even picture that he viewed her as ugly. I was like, she's a redhead for sure.
He literally says like, she's not really my type, like a few times.
Aw.
Yeah, and like, well, the first moment he's even saying anything remotely nice about her is like, well, they're on their knees trying to help Tiny's breathing by doing a pretty gross tactic of getting the snot out of his
Oh,
head.
I wanted to black that out. I completely forgot that happened.
Yeah, that's what they do.
That's what
Crazy.
they do that. And also at the end of this like little intro to Will One chapter, for some reason this whole like snot wiping, Jane driving them home, him getting drunk thing makes him start to think Jane's a little pretty. Only a little bit though. And then we're introduced to Will number 2, also named Will Grayson.
Yeah, it's David Levithan
Yeah.
time. His Will is emo as fuck. He would not
Yeah.
strike me as someone who would like Neutral Milk Hotel. Maybe like Angels and Airwaves. Maybe that's this kind of
I
Will.
think that was still too poppy for Will Grayson number
Okay.
2.
Definitely
He'd
darker.
like
Nine Inch
like red
Nails.
jumpsuit apparatus or 9 Inch Nails.
If he likes
Oh
music
my
at
god.
all.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah, he's a
yeah.
mathlete, so we don't know if he does.
Hmm.
He is a mathlete. I know. It's kind of crazy. I feel like the other like one I was like, okay, these are interests that I had in high school, like Neutral Milk Hotel. I think at some point they said Dead Milkmen and I was like, okay, fun. And then this Will, I didn't really get what he liked. It wasn't like poetry. It seemed like being sad, being depressed.
Yeah.
Relatable
Yeah,
though.
that's kind of his thing is that he's emo and he's depressed. He has 3 friends named Maura, Simon, and Derek. That we don't really know like why he's friends with them. It seems mostly like just like by association. But we also learn that he has a online relationship with someone named Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like the
And
only, oh, sorry, just like the only thing he spoke about not negatively was Isaac. And he
Yeah.
was really, really cute when speaking about Isaac. and that seemed like the only kind of light shining out under his perennial darkness.
Yeah. I will say, I thought the writing of this Will, I was like, oh God, as a depressed teen, and I think that teen angst, where your problems are so central to your personality, almost to the point where it's like, I must become them. I thought that was
Yeah.
really, really relatable. And then also all the weird quirks of like being like, what are you up to? And it's like nothing, just thinking about a cow like farting out a heifer or something. Like you would
Yeah.
slip in weird things and now you'd look back and you'd be like, was I trying to be funny? It's not good. I
Yeah.
thought that Will was really relatable in
No,
the writing.
I completely agree. I felt like Will too was like I went to like high school with people like Will too, who are very much just like I'm different. You wouldn't get me, but I'm not going to talk to you about it and like stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I was definitely a bit of a Will too. And then I would always make it my thing too of being like, you wouldn't know this though, because I'm like the positive, bubbly one, but like I have a dark, sinister
Yeah.
side. And now I'm like, okay, calm down. It's you can like
Yeah.
enjoy life and still be depressed.
Right? Yeah,
It's
you can
fine.
have you can have it all, babe. You can have it all.
I know.
But Isaac, we learn he lives in Ohio, and they like I am all day, every day.
Oh,
They
so
met
sorry.
online. They have never talked like on the phone or met in person. So something seems a little sus, but I think we all like he is very much like I know how it sounds. I know it sounds he's fake, but I can guarantee you he's real. So here I am believing Will too that like okay, if he says that he's real, I'm gonna believe he's real.
I know, I was kind of sus of it because it said Isaac worked at a music store, and I was like, well, I mean, I guess you can have a job in high school, but I thought that it's like right away you get off high school and you're talking to this guy who's working in a music store. Did he start at like 1? So was he even in high school? I mean, he could still be that age, but I would assume most people would be in school. Anyways, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Isaac and him kind of hit it off. Isaac sends him really nice shit too, like you make my life meaningful, and all the scattered pieces don't feel
Yeah.
scattered with you. And I was like, okay, beautiful.
Yeah, and we also learned that they've been talking to each other for like a
A
over a
year.
year. So like this is like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
a deep, deep, deep relationship.
Hmm.
But that's really the first part of Will number 2, and then we're back to Will 1 because these chapters are interspliced. All the odd chapters are Will 1, all the even chapters are Will 2's POV. But
Hmm.
in Will 1 chapter 2, Tiny is asking Will 1 to double down on his allyship and come to the Gay Straight Alliance so that he can get funding for this musical that he has written about himself called Tiny Dancer.
Yes. And Jane is also trying to get him to go to the Gay Straight Alliance, and it seems like he kind of has to, because they're pseudo flirting online. She's like, you'll be the hottest straight guy there. And Will has these weird, insane rules of like, I can't be happy. Like, if a girl likes me, I can't kiss a girl I like. Which it feels like it's like high
Yeah.
school is the time to kind of, you're not going to see them when you
Yeah.
graduate. Why not fuck
I don't
around and
know.
find out?
His entire thing with Jane feels like he's so just like only likes her because she likes him first. And I don't like that. I feel like Will one's kind of a piece of shit for that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have a lot of opinions on that one because this is actually when I started to almost relate to Will One. Now that being said,
We take it all back.
I
What?
yeah, I very much dislike his rules because they're very much set up just so that he doesn't put himself out there to be hurt, which is just
Hmm.
full of cowardice, and that's not how I played my games. But the fact that he has this big will they, won't they with Jane, and kind of like you said, he's now interested in her because she was interested in him. It takes
Hmm.
that risk out of there, and that's what he's so terrified of putting himself out there. Well, he's not putting himself out there. He's only half out there, even.
Hmm.
And he already knows he's like kind of safe. But I feel like he's starting to let his own walls down, which is where the cuteness seeps through.
And he's got to let
Interesting.
those walls down because at this GSA meeting, Will catches on that it is essentially the whole meeting is a setup on Tiny's behalf of making him and Jane a thing. And he's
And Will
pissed about it.
he gets really mad at that because he doesn't like Jane. He only likes that she likes him. And he's like trying to call out Tiny for this, being like, that wasn't okay. It wasn't okay for you to tell Jane that I thought she was cute because I don't. Um, and
Dude,
then
Tiny is
this is
fumbling the ball
interrupted.
on every single like because also Tiny is like, I think I'm gonna go for Gary's ex-boyfriend Nick. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Tiny, you're too young to be a toxic gay. Wait until your 20s.
Yeah.
Come on, dude.
Tiny said, no, no, no. I'm just the ripe age of 16. I can be as toxic as I want.
I can be messy. And he
But they,
is
oh, sorry. No, you go. Meg, you go.
oh no, that's all I was mostly gonna say that he's just a messy gay. Tiny
Oh my gosh,
is
excuse me.
basically not only hitting on Nick, he's telling Jane in front of everyone that she should also date Will. And Tiny's
And
like
Tiny
kind
has,
of
he has, oh, sorry. No, go keep going. I was going to say he
oh
has the
no,
perfect solution for the fact that he's going to go for his friend's ex-boyfriend and that his friend is mad at him for trying to set him up with somebody. He's just going to bring them all on a double date. Easy as that.
I know. Oh god, they're
It's
going to
so
the
funny.
storage room,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. They're going there
Yeah.
and they have to
Yeah.
go to like this concert where it's a 21 plus concert. And he's like, don't worry, Jane knows this guy Polly that you can go get a fake from. And Will goes and gets a fake after school with Jane to go to this now
Yeah.
double date.
And she does try to kiss him before they do that, and it's very, very awkward. And Jane is like, "Oh, I was given some wrong information," and Will's like, "Yeah, bitch, you were." He wasn't that aggressive, but in my head, he was. But they give him a fake ID, and they're like, "We're friends."
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
also when he starts to really, I think, almost catch those feels or realize his feels too afterwards. Because as soon as she then was chill about not kissing, then he really was like, no, I am interested. I don't know if it's because he started to feel the hurt of her being like cool with it, and then he's like, oh, these were real, or if it's just because now he wants something that he can't have.
I love that we have like a boy on this for this exact like relationship because I feel like I'm so unwavering. Like Will doesn't even like Jane, and I love that Nick gets to be like, I don't know.
This is where I related to him. I was an emotional mess in high school too, especially when it came to romance. I would meet someone and be obsessed, and 2 weeks later, I'd be done.
But
It's
Will isn't obsessed.
no, but it's different. He's like too scared to let his walls
Got
down.
it.
We differ, but it's the
Yeah.
like high intensity of anything he feels, and then his like reasoning is so broken and self focused. That's where I
Mhm.
related.
Honestly, I mean, I relate to him a lot. For there are a lot of relationships I had in high school with people who were pretty attractive, honestly, and I could have gone for it. But I think mine was more so out of pure fear, out of being like, how the fuck do I kiss? And then I would shut down and be like, I can't be touched ever. So
Yeah.
close, but not quite.
Quite similar yet different. Speaking of
Mhm.
similar yet different, let's talk about Will too in this next chapter, because Mora, his basically frenemy, because like even in the first chapter we meet her, he doesn't seem like he likes her very much, but she is storming into the CVS where Will too works, and she's going to ask him if he is gay, just point blank, interrupting him stalking. Like, girl, he's working. He's got to make his minimum wage. Leave him alone.
Yeah, he's kind of mean to her, but she's also very self-indulgent. It's just, it's kind of hard to watch because no one there is happy or healthy. They're just like dependent on each other for some reason.
Yeah, and Mora will do the insane thing where she is like, oh, well, like, I'm just like backing you into a corner to try to get you to tell me things because who are you going to tell otherwise? You don't like trust anyone. And that I was like, that is fucking nuts. But he does tell her, he's like, listen, I don't want to sleep with you. Just because I don't want to sleep with you doesn't mean I'm gay. And she's mad and storms off. But
Yeah, she
also,
also asks about Isaac. She's like, "Oh, then who's Isaac?" He's like, "None of your fucking business." And he lies about like Isaac just being a friend.
yeah,
Um,
he's like, he's a character I'm writing. What do you like? That's it. And she's like, oh, okay.
yeah. Oh yeah, and then she comes over to his house after his shift is over. Like she does not let up, and she starts trying to like come on to him. it's basically like, well, if you're so straight, why don't you kiss me? Like that's like the energy that scene gave, and it was very uncomfortable.
I know. I was like, the fact that they shared poetry to each other and he would like basically write out like fuck off, you're coming on way too strong, and she still liked him. I was like, come on. But
Yeah,
the day
like
ends well
Nora.
because Isaac is online, he's back from his movie. Will and him are talking, and Isaac says some sweet things about how like he'd wrap his arms around Will if he was there, and they decide that it's finally time they should meet. They're gonna meet on Friday.
Yeah, and that's 6 days from now. So like something for Will to look forward to and not be depressed about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
For
thank God.
once. No, I'm kidding. But now we're back with Will one, and we kind of just get some little like blips of conversations. Like he talks to his dad about his college plans. He talks to this
Mhm.
guy Clint, who used to be one of his friends on the football team, but he has now since not been friends with him. And Clint's kind of egging him on about Tiny's musical and Tiny being gay and all of that. And Will one's gonna talk to Tiny about like how like Clint's being an asshole, but Tiny doesn't have time to hear about Clint being an asshole because he spent the entire weekend with Nick and he has to make that conversation about himself.
Yeah,
Um,
Tiny does this thing
yeah,
too here where he's like, you can't talk to Clint, but I can talk to Clint because he's vice president of the student council and I need funding. So double standards, Tiny.
yeah. Yeah, and we also learn Will here also asks Tiny to not go through with the musical. And we don't really get why Will wants this other than that he's uncomfortable with like being friends with Tiny in a way.
I
Mhm.
think it's just because it's so against his rules of putting himself out there that just by Tiny putting himself out there,
Mhm.
it puts Will out there by relation.
Yeah.
And I think it was, extremely selfish of Will to ask that. At this point, we already know how important
Mhm.
this is to Tiny.
Mhm.
And to me, this is when I started to pick up on the trend that, yeah, Tiny does plenty, very kind of egotistical things, but at least he is himself and he's genuine, which are all the things I felt like Will One needed to learn and get better at. He identifies his whole relation or personality based on his relationship with Tiny. He keeps going back and forth on should I have signed that letter that defended Tiny or not? And it shows like, oh well, he wanted to do it, but he didn't want to stand up for it. Like
Mhm.
it's so wishy washy. It gets super annoying.
Yeah, Will definitely has like a 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door with his friendship. He's always like, I don't care that you're gay unless like people start to think I'm gay and I pretend that I'm cool with that and I'm not.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because the idea of like the only reason I signed the letter, not out of my own want to protect my friends, but out of like a want to see that my friend is validating their existence, it's like, well, I mean, I'd want you to do it for other gay people too, even if it wasn't
Yeah,
just me. Like, I don't want you
right?
to stand up
Mhm.
for the
Like there's a
community.
wait a minute, there's a bigger picture here. And it's like Will one is very much somebody who can't see the bigger picture in a lot of things, I
Yeah.
think. But it doesn't matter what he wants because the show has gotten approved and Tiny does ask Will to be in it to play the character based that Tiny based off of him named
Phil
Gil
Grayson.
Rayson.
Oh yeah, it's Gil Rayson. I forget.
It's Gil Rayson, and Will one's like absolutely not. Um, but he kind of has to just deal with that. But Will one does learn that Jane is newly single in this little scene too, so that's exciting for him.
She leaves
And
him a cute
he,
note.
yeah, she leaves him a cute note after he lends her his jacket,
Ooh. And the
and so
note's
he's
just
gonna one
like,
up the
oh
cuteness.
yeah, he is. They're going to this concert, and in the note, she dropped his locker combination. And at the concert that they're going to tonight, which is 21 plus, as we know, so he has his little fake, he called in to have her. Wait, is this the locker combo one?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay, so he calls in that he's going to call in her locker combo. Wait, is it? Oh, it
Yeah.
is. No, it's not. Okay. My bad. I'm
No,
gaslighting
it is.
myself over here.
I'm like,
And
you're there, Maggie, you're there.
I know, he wants them to dedicate this song that's like anus memorabilia or something. No idea.
Yeah.
To her locker code, and the band emails back very quickly. They're like, sure, which I think is so cute. Wow.
Mhm.
Honestly, like, it's weird looking back on, like, it being a locker combination. I wish he just like really went for it. I know he's not the type of guy to really go for it. Because I feel like a part of him does the locker combination so that way it like can like maybe be traced back to him, but he has a way out if it like goes weird or anything like that. Because at the same time, I'm
Yeah.
like, man, I don't remember like a single locker combination I ever had. So like if I had to like now look back on that memory, I'd be like, that was cute. But like at the same time, I'm like a locker combination. But at the time I'd be like, oh my God, you know?
Yeah, because you have like no memento from it. It's like I kind of want a cute
Yeah.
memento from
Yeah.
your
It's like,
big
couldn't
love
just be
gesture.
like, couldn't he just done like, you know, her name and his name? That could have been, that could have been fine,
Yeah,
right?
his and hers.
Yeah, I think it is just very one foot in, one foot out, like you
Yeah. He's
said,
that
and
guy,
that's
type of
that's what
guy.
he's doing, and that's what is partially so frustrating about this.
Hmm.
Um, and he's not even a mathlete, so yeah, what's the affiliation with numbers
She's
here?
not even
That he's
Dang.
just stalking her. Well, that is fairly high school esque, and I don't know. Some people kind of like that.
I do love the
Um,
idea of like some romantic gestures in high school were just straight up stalking. I was going through my high school agenda and I had highlighted One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the like play for that year over and over, and then also show choir performances. And I was like, why did I do that? And it was so I would remember to go because I had a crush in it who I never talked to. And now we're best friends. But like in hindsight, I texted him that and I was like, I was obsessed with you. Which is embarrassing, but
that's
isn't high school cringe.
really funny. That is high school.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, they do get hot dogs before the show on this forced double date that Tiny has organized. But as
Yeah.
they're walking to the show and waiting outside and going in, they learn that Will One's fake ID is wrong. Talk about stress. It's only aging him at 20, not 21. And all of his friends are like, oh man, that sucks, buddy. We'll see you after the show. And also Will does offer that. He's like, great, I'll just like hang out, see you guys after the show. So he kind of gets himself in this predicament where he's left alone.
Hmm.
But he also is mad that they like went with what he suggested. And it's like, buddy, you're the one who said, hey, go without me.
Yeah, you
So
shot yourself
yeah,
in the foot. He finds this
exactly.
porn store nearby, and he's like, I have to use my ID somewhere. So he goes to the porn store, and he's like, I'm gonna find such a funny little trinket in here to
He's
show
like, I'm gonna
them.
get freaky now.
He comes with this like Spanish magazine that's called Mano y Mano, which yeah, go off. Oh, it's
Yeah.
$9 too, which was crazy.
Yeah, and also like in his head, he's like, it's gonna be really funny because I'm gonna give this to Tiny and Jane to just know that like I had a fun, quirky night, and it's not fully well thought through because it's like, oh, your fun night was just buying a gay magazine that is a porn magazine, like that was it. You did 3 hours of that.
Yeah, why not buy like a cock ring and then be like, "Oh, it's a bracelet." And then just
Yeah,
try to gaslight them into thinking it's a bracelet. That's kind of funny. What if you
yeah.
did
Because
that?
like if I knew Will Grayson one like the way I think like I do, I feel like I would be on the receiving end of that. He shows me this magazine. I'd be like, did you just spend 3 hours sifting through porn magazines? That's kind of weird.
Except, all right, here's my defense for him. They're what,
Nick,
17?
always to the defense.
My point is in high school, going to a porn store would be considered cool because not everyone
Yeah.
can do it. And like
Yeah.
buying that, sure, he can't get into the bar, but he can do this at least. And I highly doubt Will even knew what a cock ring was. So he was being as simple,
That's fair.
cracker esque as he could be to just get the easiest thing that his gay friend might enjoy and also get a chuckle out of so
Yeah.
that his night
He
isn't
needed a store
wasted.
attendant Meg to help him out and find that cock ring.
Exactly. Yeah. The guy running that shop was not doing business good. But while Will is actually perusing this porn shop, we check in with Will too, who's really excited because the hours are ticking down for him to meet Isaac in Chicago. I think he's in Indiana or a different suburb of Illinois. I don't know if we ever get where he's actually is, but he's gonna take the train to get to Chicago.
I had no idea.
She
I
was the
assumed
real
it was
annoyer.
somewhere west, because at some point they had like
The Ilgin, that's a place that's west.
yeah, they had like a Hispanic like food day at their cafeteria. So
Mm.
I assumed it was west of Chicago.
I remember more suburbs being brought up than Evanston.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
because
don't remember
Mm,
where, but I do agree. I think he is from like Elmhurst or Elgin or something.
okay.
Um, but he thought Isaac was from Ohio.
yeah, well, Isaac
Hmm.
was gonna take a train in to meet him or drive in to meet
Yeah, yeah,
him.
yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
not going to
Isaac.
happen because they have mathletes tonight and they need four people. Will Grayson is the fourth seat on it, and Simon and Derek are not going to let him off the like chain for this because they
Which,
need
like, talk
him.
about bad friends. Oh my God.
I
Let him
know,
go, let him go
seriously.
get dick down. Are you kidding me?
I know. He even like goes out on a limb. He's like, I have a date, and Simon's like, and get someone else to do it then. Get
Yeah.
someone else to do
He's like,
it.
and we have math to do. Okay, nerd.
It's because they weren't his friends. Like they
No.
they really at this point it showed they weren't his friends. They were just proxy mates essentially.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
well, the only quote unquote friend he has actually replaces him being Mora.
Yeah, and he has flashcards ready for her. He like swindles her in, gives her some money, gives her some flashcards, and he's good to gallivant off to the city for the night. So he's walking off the train, walking to their meet spot, and he's really confused because the address he was given from Isaac is a porn shop.
What?
Porn shop.
And Will 1 sees Will 2 walk in, and it's just like, this guy looked really afraid to be in here. And he's like, well, shoot, how do I look in here? Um, and the shop owner ends up confronting the first Will, being like, hey, Will Grayson on your credit card isn't the same name as your fake ID. And then Will 2 runs up and he's like, did you say Will Grayson? And that's why when
Hmm.
they learn, we have the same
Same
name.
Two wills
name.
collide.
Two
And
wills
yeah, this,
collide. That was really
oh,
good.
that's really good. That should be the subtitle for this book, like Will Grayson, two wills collide.
Two wills collide.
Um,
Yeah.
or if the chapters had name and like all of the chapters had like Will in the name, that would have been a really good chapter name.
Two Will, two Grayson. I'm really trying to work a Too Fast, Too Furious joke in here.
Yeah, honestly, anytime we can
That'd
get
be
a
the
Too
sequel.
Fast, Too Furious in there is funny.
Yeah.
But Will 2 does like is kind of like lingering around the first Will because like they're clearly the same age, and he's like, hey, do you know Isaac? And then they really swap stories, and Will 1's like, no, here's my concert story. Will 2's like, hey, here's my Isaac story. And
Hmm.
Will 1 is like, hey, buddy, I don't think Isaac's real or coming. Like, why would he give you an address to a porn shop? So Will 2's kind of
Yeah.
hurt. That sucks.
Poor guy. I know. And he's like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
I've memorized like all of his photos on Facebook. And Will's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. But they're both kind of waiting on a
But
call right now, because
they're
Will 1 wants a call from Jane, and then Will 2 gets a call from Maura and is like, well, I'm not gonna not pick up because now this other Will is talking
yeah.
to
Their
Jane.
phones ring at the same time and they're like, ooh, two Will's phones are ringing. Spooky dooky.
Yes. And the call that Jane, whatever that call is irrelevant. But the Maura call is so important because it's fucking her saying that she has been catfishing Will for a year to go to Chicago to meet up with Isaac and lied to her. And and so he's like she's punishing him for lying to her about being gay, which is fucking insane. And he chews her ass out as he should. He starts sobbing. John Green's Will is like, "Are you okay?" And then this Will just like pours his heart out. He's like, "Love hurts so much because it's inextricably tied to truth. And when the truth just kind of doesn't exist, what are you left with?" Which I thought was a really beautiful sentiment of truth and love. Also, how would you know that at 16? It's like, you're not going to know that yet. You just want to fuck,
I
probably.
know. It was pretty interesting, but I feel like when you're given that kind of well set up, because he literally realized he was in love with someone who was not at all true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I personally did not see this coming. I didn't see it coming when I was 16. I didn't see it coming this time around either. And then going
Yeah.
back over it, I thought it was wild that, of course, right after Will and Maura have that huge fight, is right
Hmm.
when Isaac says, "Hey, we should finally meet up." So like Maura was done with the bit. She was done with Will too, and wanted to really finally get him.
Yeah, and it's just like she just wanted control the whole time. And the minute it felt like it
Hmm.
was like maybe he was like upset at her in his real life, that I was so mad. That fucking cunt. And he calls her a cunt, which good for him,
Oh
as he
my,
should.
rightfully so. Honestly, I think this is the first time we've gotten the word cunt dropped in a
Hmm.
YA book, and I was here for it. Like, David Levithan, congratulations. You did it. You had me won
Congratulations.
over.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, you said cunt. Uh,
I really didn't even realize that was said, but that's probably because I'm not allowed to say that word, so I don't remember it.
yeah,
That's fair. What an ally. Who are you,
but
Will, showing up to the GSA meeting?
yeah, talk
At
about a
one point
half-assed
in my
ally.
life, I was.
Um, but
Will
while
does
this is
have to talk to
all
Tiny.
yeah, so Will one's like, "Hey Tiny, I've got someone I think you should meet." And Will 2 does
Hmm.
meet Tiny. So he Will 1 kind of is like, "I'm going to let you two kids catch up and meet each other." And Will 1's going to go talk to Jane, and
Hmm.
he's just going to lay it all on the line now. He's like, "Hey, I like you, and this, that, and the other thing." And she's like, "My ex was at the show." Yeesh. And
Yeesh.
and she says, "He actually dedicated my favorite song to me by using my locker combination." Can you believe that? He never did stuff like that when we were together. So it's like, man, she's giving credit to her ex for something Will did. And Will doesn't admit it. Will doesn't say that was me.
I was
No.
so
I
mad.
was so mad. Like, buddy, just say, "No, I stalked you and I gave them your locker combination."
No, instead, his approach is just to disparage Randall. Her ex is named yet another old man's name. And this works for a
Yeah.
bit because they do kiss, and then she's like, I need to get a cab home. And then Will is trying to find Tiny, but when he goes back to the spot that other Will and Tiny were, they're not there. They're also bye
Yeah,
bye.
no,
So Will's mad about this.
they're yeah, Will's left all alone once again for the second time this night, which honestly, he kind of deserves it. He kind of sucks, in my opinion. But we're back, and Tiny and Will too now. We're focusing on them. They've walked to the bean romance. Nick and I have never done that. And Tiny sings Will too a song from the show. Babe, we don't go to the bean ever.
You guys gotta go to the bean.
No comment.
Babe. But Tiny sings Will to a cappella a song from his show, Tiny Dancer.
Yeah.
And Will too is suddenly like, okay, Tiny's sexy. Which is
It
interesting
did
because
not seem
like
like this couple would work.
they're so opposite.
Yeah,
I was like honestly shocked where
exactly.
I was like, there's no way.
I thought Tiny was really being the best Tiny he could be in the
Yeah.
moment. You know, very, very shiny new out the package Tiny. Everything was wonderful, but also I took that as everything Will 2 needed, as far as we knew at this point in time. But someone who just was completely, confident in who they were,
Mhm.
genuine, but also just loved life for the dumbest and funnest things,
Yeah.
which were like kind of like music, being proud, just things that Will 2 was basically completely against, had nothing in his life about
Yeah.
it. I thought that's why he had everything, Tiny had everything Will 2 needed at that point in time.
Yeah. I,
Yeah.
I I get that they're like it's very much like an opposites attract thing, but I feel like Will 1 wasn't intuitive enough to like know that like this is exactly what Will 2 I met 10 minutes ago needs. It really seemed like, "Hey, I met a gay guy and my best friend's a gay guy.
Gay
Clearly they're
guy.
going to fall in
Put them
love."
together. I know.
I think that and a bit of a one off.
I think I kept going back and forth on that because at first I was like, oh, it's just like they're like, let's hook the gay guys up together. But I mean, I wasn't fully realized as gay in high school, but I do think there is like that's a pretty specific gay experience of like when you're in a small town and there's only one other gay person. It does make sense kind of that it's like two birds of a
Yeah.
feather flock together. So I was like, all
Yeah.
right, I guess it's fine. I mean, I don't love that as a plot, but it's, it'll work out
You
for a
know,
bit, and it
it'll
does.
work out. And it does, because after Will 2 has this like mini little meltdown about like, I'm so different. They end up kissing. Um, yeah,
They
and that's kind of
do.
great for them. They kiss by the bean, which is the epitome of romance. Uh,
You guys, if you guys haven't gone on a date with your third, the bean, are you even dating?
dang. I feel like if you're a couple in Chicago, your third is always the bean first.
Open your relationship up for the bean, you guys. Why haven't you thought of that?
Man, man, Nick and I have to have a
Mm-mm.
talk after this episode.
Yeah, I
Um,
didn't realize this was an intervention about
Yeah,
not going to the bean.
yeah. Nick and I need to have a talk, and Nick's point of the conversation is going to be much different than mine.
exactly. I think the
um,
bean should be involved in it. That's like couples therapy, but there's no therapist. It's just the bean. It's running
your
the whole
therapist being like,
session.
"Have you gone to the Cloud Gate?" It's more commonly known as the bean. It's really reflective. You can see yourself in it. It's like a giant reflective bean.
It does give a new perspective.
I do love this bit.
We love the bean. Not enough bean in this book. A little bit of bean in
Not
this
enough
book, but not
bean.
enough.
Not enough
You know what
bean.
they
No.
say.
Instead, Tiny the next day at school is like telling everyone that he kissed Will Grayson. We get a little bit
He
of a
killed
fun
Will
who's on
Grayson.
first. No, he didn't. No, he didn't kill him. He didn't kill him. He kissed Will Grayson. And they're texting now. And Will is like, "Wow, that must be nice. I'm running into this problem of Jane's ex-boyfriend." And Tiny's not helpful right now. He's like, "Oh, he's super hot. Yeah, they should
Yeah.
get back together."
Will finds out that Tiny told Jane to get back together with like her ex. And honestly, I feel like fair because Will this entire time has never told Tiny once that he actually likes Jane. In fact, he said the exact opposite. So why wouldn't Tiny be like, "Hey, just get back together with the guy who likes you. And if you like him,
Yeah.
that's fine." Like why would Will one get mad at that?
I
No,
could be
honestly,
giving
that's just a good
Tiny too
friend.
much credit, but I feel like Tiny did that on purpose to be like, look, I knew you were kind of interested, but you didn't own up to it when it was time. Now you're
Mhm.
mad that she's got someone, and he's trying to make it sink in. And if we want to go even deeper, if Tiny can, it's possible, of just like, he's so afraid to put himself out there. Maybe Tiny's trying to show him that if you do put yourself out there and it hurts real bad, you'll still fucking live.
Dang.
Yeah,
That's pretty deep.
that's really nice.
But
And now that she's with a boyfriend, he does put himself out there. He tells her that he's only talking to cute girls today because he's ignoring Tiny. And later at his locker, Jane is like, "You can't say those things because, like, technically I'm taken by my ex-boyfriend." Um, Oops,
yeah, but they're
drama.
gonna keep hanging out. They're like, we're still friends. They're gonna go watch the auditions for the show together. And that's kind of where we leave them for now because Will number two is about to dive headfirst into being gay now. He gets home and he's like, "Mom, by the way, gay." And she's like, "That's cool." And he's like, is your freak out?" And she's like, that's not really gonna happen. Which I actually really loved that was like it was so nonchalant. I felt like that was such a good thing that like Will 2 really wanted like a drama coming out with his parent, and his mom's just like, "I just love you, buddy." I was so happy that was the scene that they put for that. Oh, I broke
I
my pen.
know. I really liked that like up until this point he had been really mean to his mom and like I mean, the teen thing of holding someone who would really understand you at arm's length as a kid because you don't think
Yeah.
that they will. So I loved this because this moment kind of it starts like mending their friendship and their relationship in general
Hmm.
on his side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, I felt like everything about his mom, she's just such an angel. Like, and he is almost coming to terms with the fact that he does not have to be alone in this world. Literally, his biggest ally, biggest fan is living with him all the time, and she is 11 out of 10 wonderful.
100%. And he's got a good cover because now he can say that Isaac is tiny and everyone just calls him Tiny. So we get kind of a silver lining there because that kind of paid off that he never really told his mom much about Isaac. Um, and then after this, Mora does try to apologize to him. Doesn't work. He's done with her, rightfully so. Mora
Yeah.
sucks. We hate her. And then he's gonna march into the lunchroom and tell Simon and Derek, his two mathlete besties, that he's gay. Simon is not on board, which is gross.
No, he
Simon.
says that's weird. And then he's like, how does that even work? Like, someone sticks their dick where you shit? And I was like, ugh, I'd have no friends at this point, straight up. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah. But he makes a new friend. He makes a friends with another gay guy at the school named Gideon,
Best
who
name in the book.
best name in the book. And Gideon does like DJing, and they just kind of are like vibing on the whole like, hey, we might not have tons in commons, but we can all like talk about how like weird this is being gay in a school like this where everyone's like kind of not on board.
Yeah, no one is. Like, someone comments on his MySpace a freaking F slur straight out the bat, and I just felt really bad for him. But it seems like Will and this Gideon,
Yeah.
they're gonna hit it off. Will invites him to sit with Simon and David, which, again, I think maybe don't subject another gay kid to trauma, but I guess,
Like, hey, my new gay friend, do you want to come sit next to my mathlete friend that hates gay people?
Hmm.
Maybe okay, but like in Will Two's defense, he's really new to this whole out and proud thing, so he
yeah.
does have to, learn, I think, some lessons the hard way that he doesn't need to spend time with Simon.
I
Like,
mean, listen, it's 2010, and when you're like fully out and immersed in being, well, you don't really have a community. It's not like you suddenly get gay friends. Like, I
yeah,
learned at like 25, and at 16, when it's 2010 and everyone thinks that the F slur is the funniest, is the easiest way to get a laugh because
yeah.
we grew up in a society that was socialized that way by media and TV. I guess you kind of got to be forgiving, but that really sucks that you can't have that boundary as a 16-year-old.
Hmm.
Yeah. I feel like if this book was written now, this entire sequence would have went a little bit differently if that was how that played out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Silver
definitely had
lining.
to do with the timing they were at, and then also, I mean, these are kids, very emotional teenagers
Yeah.
who can be quite savage for no reason other than it makes them look a little higher on the totem pole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And back in the Will One-averse, so we thought about doing that type of thing, like kind of a Will One-averse, Will
That
Two-niverse.
was
Love it.
beautiful.
Will- in the Will One-averse, a very caffeinated Tiny picks up Will One way too early in the morning. He's jittery out of his mind, very, very coffee. And Tiny's like, hey, I realized my show wasn't really about anything. It was about me, but it's not like a subject matter. Like it needs to have like an actual theme. So he's like, I rewrote the entire thing. It's now called Hold Me Closer. It's about love. Um, and he's on one. And Will One also learns that Jane's playing hooky today with her ex to go to the botanical gardens. Isn't that a
Romantic.
bummer?
Could have been the bean,
Yeah.
though. Not as romantic as the
Hey,
bean.
very different places. One's for romance and one's for gardens, you know?
One's for weddings, and that's the bean. You ever seen a wedding at the bean? I'd love to.
I'm sure plenty of people do that.
That sucks.
That does suck. Like that is like it's so funny because like where the bean is such a not scenic place in Chicago. I also love that we can't stop not coming back to the bean.
It's a good callback.
It's a great callback. Always call it back to the bean. But Will One, upset that Jane is playing hooky with her boyfriend, is
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
go to Jane's house instead.
Yeah. Well, I also picked
Yeah.
up that Tiny's pulling away in this moment.
Hmm.
He's more focused on the musical, which is fair, but in Will One's eyes, anything that's not attention on him when he wants it is bad. So he's like starting to get like negative feelings towards Tiny,
Hmm.
his number one ally. And it's just again, Will being dumb, and he and Jane also agree to be friends here. Like they have
Yeah.
that chat, and I'm just like, will be able to move on? Doubt it.
Doubt
Yeah,
it.
it's interesting because it's like all of the things that Will dislikes about Tiny, Will just is. He just dislikes the traits that he already has and can't see, you know?
Yeah, I do think it is a thing that is very born out of jealousy. But I don't know. I feel like I've known a lot of tinies in my life. I've been a tiny in my
Yeah,
life, and I think that the chasing in a friendship that can get really exhausting of feeling like you are
yeah,
someone's second person.
that's so
It's
true.
true.
And and now he's kind of refocusing all of that energy and love that he had for Tiny on obsessing over Jane. And when they
Healthy.
describe just deciding on being friends, they have a pretty good moment that I think was a great conversation for Will's character. And they have a talk about Schrodinger's cat. And he
Hmm.
comes to the conclusion he likes a life of not knowing what's in the box.
Hmm.
Because when
Yep.
you take a chance, then you either open the box and it's a beautiful relationship or a breakup. And he's like, no, thank
Yeah,
Yeah.
you.
yeah, big no thank you energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back in Will Two's world, Tiny's gonna come over for dinner, for because they're boyfriends now.
We
And
heard
Will
that.
Two is like excited, and then his kind of vibe immediately turns once Tiny gets there because like Tiny shows up in his like mom's nice car, and Will
Mm-hmm.
Two is very insecure because he's like, I'm not rich like Tiny's rich, and it's like I don't think that Tiny is like rich, but to obviously in Will Two's eyes, he is has more money than Will Two does. Um,
Yeah.
but Tiny is like being really sweet during this entire scene. He's always like, "This apartment's great. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for cooking dinner." He gives Will's mom a gift, which is really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like a very very cute kind of date night.
Yeah, and like after he gives Tiny gives Will's mom the glassware, Will has like been really overwhelmed this whole time and he's like, maybe it's okay for me to have nice things. And they make out afterwards. Will is kind of questioning if he's attracted to Tiny, and he does the classic I'm going to hurt you thing. And Tiny's like, no, I don't think so. It's okay. You don't have to be bad. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of their dynamic for like a while is him being
Yeah,
like, I'm
yeah, it's
self-destructive.
very much the one layer in their relationship.
And I would say we really get a little bit more about now we see Will too finally appreciating life a bit and like showing these signs that he isn't always depressed, like a little bit of just progress for him. But when it comes to anything he's insecure about, the wealth, his father, he will
Mm-hmm.
not accept nor talk to Tiny about it. And so it's almost like he wants everything with Tiny to be shiny and golden, which as adults we know that's not how relationships work.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. You better
I
buckle up, buddy. You better go to
had to know
couples
too.
therapy with the bean if that's what you're thinking. Eh? You can go to couples therapy with the
What do you
bean.
mean everything's not shiny and golden, bitch? No, I'm kidding. Um,
The next day,
but now, yes,
Oh, but I was
take it
gonna.
away, Meg.
Will one. He is kind of noticing that Tiny's a bit weird. He's a little off. And he's like, "All right, Tiny must be so busy. I'm gonna go have lunch in the auditorium because he's like they must be running a dress rehearsal." And he overhears Tiny being like to Gary, who is playing Phil Grayson or whoever Will's character
Yeah,
is. He's like, listen, you gotta be annoying. You gotta be really annoying and unlikable, essentially. And this makes Will start crying.
yeah, yeah. And Tiny does like kind of shout out, like, "Buddy, it's just the character. It's not actually you." Will doesn't hear it. He takes it very, very personally. Gets very mad, very sad. Feels like a major, major burden.
Yeah.
And so then he tries to call Jane, gets a voice memo, and then he calls his dad to call him in sick, and then he just like goes home, and then his dad comes and hangs out with him.
Yeah, his dad was amazing here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Normally, I'm not about to brag about people's parents, but his dad was just so sweet. Zipped home within 15 minutes, and then didn't pressure him. He was just
Yeah.
there for him. It was really beautiful to see. Um, and
Yeah.
just to go back a little bit, like yeah, Tiny did defend himself, but very poorly because there was no emotion behind the defense. So it's like I was kind of mad at both of them in this moment,
Mhm.
but I also feel like that's what
Hmm.
Will One needed to hear.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
interrupting this, Jane comes over and she has dumped her boyfriend. He is now an ex yet again. She admits that she likes Will. They end up kissing, and then she ends up staying for dinner.
And the way she said it was so cute. She says, "I want to open the box."
Yeah, and then
There's
he
a
was like,
lot of
"I'll open your box."
There's a lot of
Sorry.
really good lines at the end of
Yeah.
I think this chapter, because one that has stuck with me for days was when he's like, it's Jane who shows up and it's not Tiny, and he's really upset, and he has this really great line of planets like Tiny get new moons and moons like me get new planets, and I have been trying to
Yeah.
figure out like which I've served in other people's lives and which I want to serve
Mhm.
going forward. We had a long talk about
Mhm.
it. Like I feel like I'm transitioning hopefully into a moon phase because I think being a planet feels like you suck up so many other people's energy
Yeah.
and time and don't give much back
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, and that I love that line, and then, like, in that sentence, like, in that sequence, it feels like, moons feel a lot more present and feel a lot more aware of what where they're going and what they wanna do, and intentional with who they're spending their time with and what planets they're revolving around, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah, I love
Hanging out
it.
with other moons, you know?
Hanging out with other moons. Meanwhile, Tiny's he's having a bad day. He's skipping school. He's going to see Will Grayson too, and this Will Grayson has, as we know, Gideon is his gay friend, and Tiny's like a little bit jealous that they're friends. And Will's kind of nervous about Tiny showing up because he's like, people are finally gonna notice. I'm gonna have to be confronted with the fact that like I'm out, and they do. It seems like Will kind of handles it with grace. He's like trying to escort Tiny to the lunchroom. He's like, "Well, you can like let's meet my friends. Let's go, and you
Mhm.
can meet them, and it's quesadilla day or something, and good time all around."
Good
Trying to
time
cheer
all
up Tiny
around,
in his own
but
ways.
yeah, and it ends up getting a little awkward at times to the point where like Will is very much like, this is a lot. Let's like leave so that way, we can just have each other to ourselves. And Tiny's like, that sounds like a really great idea. And then Tiny's like, one more thing before we leave. Where does Mora sit? And Tiny goes up and starts confronting Mora. And Will stops her. And honestly, I kind of wish Will was just like, yep, you do your thing and meet me in my car. I really wish he just kind of like kept letting Tiny tell her off.
I know. I feel like there's so much passion you have, like especially as a kid, that I think have no moral compass for a bit. You don't have to take the high road. Like
Yeah.
be petty. He
Yeah.
does say something about when he is confronting Mora, where he's like, just know if you try to ruin someone's life, it only gets better. You just don't get to be a part of it. That I was like, fuck yeah, go off, Tiny.
And also
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Like,
Which
Yeah.
was, I mean, also he didn't want, like, his whole thing was he didn't want to give Maura anything, just
Yeah.
literally nothing. So she just was stuck in this purgatory. So it's like I understood why Tiny wanted to stand up and give her the old yell down, but like understood also Will Two's point there of the kind of slow torture. However, I don't think Will Two realized how much that weighed on him.
mhm.
Yeah, like I think too, it's like, oh my God, like in partnerships, especially like if you see a partner going through it, it's like you want to do something to stand up for them, and
Mhm.
like having to
Hmm.
take a back seat is excruciating. I hate
Yeah.
it.
But they disperse this situation. Will Two and Tiny go find some swings. And they're swinging, they're having a good time, but the conversation changes quickly and they're starting
Hmm.
to fight. And it's just very clear that they're two different kind of levels in kind of their self journeys, where it's like Tiny's been out for a while, this is Will's first time being out, and it's not good because, oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember the exact like thing that Will
It's
too
like
says. He's like,
Will is mad because Tiny is like, or no, Will keeps being like, your life is so easy. And Tiny's like, my life isn't easy. Like, I've had to build
mm-hmm,
this resilience because I'm fat and I'm gay. Like, I'm very presently in rooms where I'm not wanted.
yeah,
And Tiny keeps like reassuring Will. He's like, I love you. And Will's like, you're not in love with me. You're in love with the fact you think I need you, which is
yeah.
pretty harsh. And they break
Well,
up.
also I feel like that's also such like a high school response, is where you look at somebody else and you go, they have it so easy. And it's like you don't acknowledge that literally everybody has problems. And it's like it's such a thing for even like adults to like have kind of a mask that they fit into. And that's exactly what Tiny's done. And I really like this scene for that reason, because it's like we do get that dimension of Tiny of being like, yes, like the reason I am the way I am is literally a product of how people have treated me. Um,
Yeah.
but they break up, as Maggie said.
They break up. Will starts crying to his
Ah,
mom. He's IMing Tiny later. He's like really trying to salvage things. But it doesn't really feel
doesn't
like
work.
there is any salvaging. Like it is
No.
done.
And then back at Evanston school, Will, One, and Tiny, they're like talking again, but it's really basic and generic and bland conversations. Like it just does, it feels very removed. So Will, One is
Yeah, he
being a
doesn't
little
even know
dramatic,
that
and
they
he's like,
broke up.
yeah, I know,
Mm-hmm.
but like Will, One is being a dramatic of being like, the friendship is over, and it's just like, buddy, like you haven't even talked about like your feelings at all. It can't be over until
Yeah.
until that. Like, let's take a step back.
I mean, they're
Yeah.
talking, but they're not saying anything, which Will
Exactly.
describes as probably more painful. It's like one of the first insights to his emotions he's actually said.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it's sad, but it's also just pitiful.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and
Um.
I mean, it reminds me of this one passage that I will definitely forget about. That at some point, I think Tiny's like saying, because this a whole book is about like breakups, and he's
Mhm.
bringing up that like in romantic relationships, you have like the falling in love and then the breakup, and like points are
Mhm.
mapped out. But in friendships, you just are friends, and then you're that forever. So breakups hurt a lot more in friendships because you're never expecting
Mhm.
it. And I was like, that is very profound. I completely
Yeah.
agree.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. And also in this instance, Will, One, does like kind of say that he's tired of being Tiny's plan B.
hmm.
Um, and as if that wasn't, enough for him to think about, Jane comes up to him and being like, "Hey, we need to define this relationship and put a label on it." Um, and
They
it's an
agree to
interesting
date.
kind of juxtaposition. Yeah, it's like they've only been together for a little bit, but they're gonna do that. But somehow something that weirded me out about this, where it's like Jane was like, "Hi, I'd like to, put really like a label on our box, essentially." And then like through this, Will, One, realizes that he's also been a jerk to Tiny, and is like, "I need to go apologize to Tiny." And I read it a couple times because I wasn't really sure like how he got there. I mean, I'm glad that he did, but I was just like, this is an interesting kind of pairing to have here.
I kind of read it as Tiny was the only person he could tell in his life that he was dating someone.
Ah,
So that's why
that's
I thought he
yeah,
was like, I need to go find him in the dugout.
yeah,
I similar to you, Maggie. I thought that was Tiny's the person to tell him to stop being full of shit and to go do something about it.
yeah,
Mm,
And
yeah.
that's what was slowly happening, not happening when Jane asked that question. He was about ready to follow his dumb rules instead of actually commit.
Yeah. That's
yeah,
fair. That's true. And he
yeah.
comes in
Fair, fair.
hot and
So
quick with this dugout because he is like talking to Tiny. He's like, listen, you're really self involved. You make me feel like shit. And Tiny's like, you're really self involved too. You're not
yeah,
not guilty.
I like this was one of my favorite parts of the book, 'cause it was like they were both like very giving and acknowledging of like, I am bad, you are bad, we are both bad. Like
Hmm.
Hmm.
it wasn't like well, you did this and you like, no, no, no. It wasn't trying to point the finger. It was just like, yeah, we both suck. And I really really enjoyed that, because it's like it was a very mature conversation. I don't think any of the fights I had in high school would have ever went this way, but I wish they had.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I was way too afraid of confrontation.
Exactly. But now that they've made up, Tiny, like Will, One is like, I want to help any way I can with the musical, and Tiny's like, great, knew you were gonna say that. He has a note prepared that he hands them. And also I also love that, because it shows, because like, pages ago, Will, One was like, this friendship is over, this, that, the other thing, it is dead. But it also, by Tiny having this note, it shows that Tiny is aware that like fights happen and exist, and then like in the grand scheme they're not important, and they're gonna come back to what they were, because he was ready for them to make up. Tiny knew that this was just a sliver of everything, and
Yeah.
it wasn't as deep as Will 1 was making it. And he has this cute little note thing like, Will 1 and Jane, here's exactly what I need from you. Thank you so much for offering to help with the show. And I actually really like that because it also gave more depth to Tiny by doing this too.
Yeah, I do love the mindset that it's like an argument or a big blowout is just a conversation. Like I
Yeah,
never ever want to lose my friendship, so I'm like, well,
exactly.
good thing we talked about it, you
Yeah,
know?
and like it showed Tiny's emotional maturity a ton. And
Yeah.
Tiny even paints himself as this character of just like, I'm fabulous and I'm big.
Yeah.
But when it kind of got down to it, yeah, it was that third dimension of Tiny and Will like appreciating it more, appreciating the fact that Tiny is a lot like deserves a lot more credit than Will regularly gives him.
Yeah, I think it would have been
Yeah.
very easy for either of these authors to lean into like, well, Tiny's just extra and he's fun and he likes musicals, but it's like they both have had very good moments of giving Tiny like the he's a real person, like where in David Levithan's scene of Tiny saying, "Hey, I have problems too, and I do this as a front," and now John Green doing this entire kind of sequence of very much hinting at that, like, yeah, Tiny's very aware of how arguments and friendships kind of work.
Tiny is a diamond in the rough, and Will Grayson, number two, he's kind of realizing it because he's talking to his mom. He's like, I
Mhm.
feel really bad for dumping Tiny, and she's like, I think you should still go to his play, and gives the worst advice in the book, which is you should befriend Mara again.
No,
Hmm.
no, mom. We loved you. We loved you for like 250 something pages at this point, and that is wrong.
But mom didn't
Insane.
know.
That's true.
Mom didn't know
Oh,
why
yeah.
they had a falling
That's a
out.
very good defense. Mom doesn't know
Okay.
that Mora
Okay.
catfished her son for a
Mom
year.
only knows that Mora
Right.
was the main person who was Will's friend.
Yeah, that's
Okay, so then
fair. Will,
after
then Will
this,
too should tell his mom.
After this, he
Mhm.
talks to Will Grayson about love, whatever. He's like, I might go to the show. Give Tiny a heads up if I come. Whatever. That goes by. So the real villain then here is Gideon because the next day Gideon's like, you shouldn't have left things the way you did with Mara. Before I take you to the play, go talk to her. What is going on? No.
Yeah.
Gideon's bored.
Get,
Gideon
get,
wants to fuck some shit up right now,
hey,
and I love that.
we thought Tiny was extra. Gideon stirs the pot, bitch. Gideon's going to wreak havoc on his school.
And we just have the most
Um,
insane scene where Will goes over to Mora and he's like, I'm sorry for also being shitty. That's fine, whatever. I don't think he led her on. He was just trying to express a boundary and clearly didn't trust this woman with a boundary. And he's like, you were shittier, but I could have just been honest with not wanting to be your boyfriend or best friend. And she's like, okay, but I don't get it. Cause like you liked Isaac, so why not me? Why not
which,
me?
like,
And I was like,
girl, what do you mean?
he's
Like, he's
gay.
out to the whole school and you still don't get it. He had a boyfriend come into the lunchroom 2 days ago, and you're still like, but why doesn't he like me? Like, no.
Mhm.
But I will
Insane.
say the only good thing about this conversation is that it is much more of a closure talk than it is a like a but let's bygones be bygones. It's not like a let's get back together, let's kind of sweep this under the rug. It is very much like a we are not friends for each other.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
want to point out that Will apologized first. Will starts the convo, is the bigger person,
Yeah.
because Mora's not going to do that.
No.
Mora's going to continue
No.
to be shitty, and Will is finally like cutting her off and moving on, which
Yeah.
I did think, okay, I think Gideon knew that and was doing it, or was just being a chaos
Mm,
monster, which is great because at least it worked out. But no,
one or the
Will
other.
needed to be the person to start it, to end it, and to move on for
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah, and Mora just gets to be the
Mhm.
shitty horny girl that she is.
Exactly. And she is. Boy, she is. Meanwhile,
But ladies
on
and gents,
Will Grayson. Yeah, we're here, baby. We're here. We
oh,
made
we,
it.
we both had good segues. You go, you got it, Meg.
I was just gonna say, it's the day of the play, and boy is Tiny nervous.
Woo-hoo.
He's vomiting everywhere. Not good for
He's
his
sick.
voice.
He's gotten food poisoning. he has to chug a whole bottle of Pepto-Bismol, which I was like, you are not supposed to chug a whole bottle of
I
that.
don't think it was food poisoning either. I think it was just nerves.
Well, he said he got
I think it
something
was
from
just
like
nerves.
Burrito Express.
Yeah, that was just nerves, I think.
Okay.
I think so.
Don't blame
And
the
he asked,
restaurant.
I
he asked
blame the
Will Grayson
restaurant.
one. You can, you can. I've gotten food poisoning. It's awful. But he asked Will Grayson number one. He's like, "Can you go look if other Will is here?" And Will's like, "I can't find him." So Tiny's feeling a bit better. And after he's just chugged this Pepto Bismol, he's like, "I'm ready to take the stage."
And he
Oh my gosh,
is.
he made a whole ass dugout for one set. I'm sorry. Can we talk about the production value on
The
this with
production value of
$1,000
this musical,
budget?
like, y'all, we have to like think about like Tiny is like very smart because it's not that he just like to write a musical is not just, oh, you're writing dialogue. It is you are writing dialogue, you are writing songs, you are writing music. Like Tiny
Mhm.
has to be some sort of genius to be able to write a 2-act musical and then also rewrite the entire musical over the course of a couple of nights. Like that's insane.
Insane.
That's a lot of production, it's a lot of thought.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's an entire
It's
dugout. They do this whole baseball scene. The cool thing about this musical is, I will say, okay, before I say the cool thing, the uncool thing about this musical is I wanted to see more of what was actually in the musical because we only get snippets of it. But
Yes.
Will Grayson gets to watch it from the sidelines, Will won, and kind of see like the good ways that Tiny interprets his friendship. So a lot of it was in Will's head, which is, I think, really, really smart. The way
I
it
do
was
like
written.
that. I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, when will media learn that we want to see the play? Anytime someone in a book or a movie is like, "We are writing the play," I want to see the whole play.
Oh, I'm still mad about Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen. There's an entire musical at the end of that movie, and they showed us bits and pieces, and I'm like, but what's it about? They were fighting over the part of Eliza for so long, and we do not know what it's about still.
Yeah. I was thinking
Yeah.
Euphoria most recently, but I guess we
Yeah,
got
that's
like a
another
few
good
of that.
example.
It
Yeah.
drives me
Yeah.
crazy. Show it to me.
Like, just show me you took the time to write it in, write the entire thing, and show your work. It's like a math
Yeah.
problem. You have to show your work.
I love that. We get a
um,
montage of scenes. There's some light bullying in the dugout. We get Tiny's defended by a tiny Will, because they're babies. Tiny comes out
yeah.
to his parents, then he comes out to Will at Pride. And then there's Will being annoying when Tiny hangs the posters. And then it's the second
Yeah.
half. We're in the second half.
Yeah, and also Gideon and Will number 2 did not time their arrival out because they're showing up second act of the play, which kind of rude. And he's like, "No, no, no, it's fine. I'm just going to call Will Grayson who is helping manage the stage." And he calls this
Yeah.
other Will during the show and I'm like, "Buddy, time and a place, that is disrespectful."
Yeah, I don't think John Green's been backstage, nor Leviathan or Levithan.
Yeah. Yeah, but they have a full conversation like as like one of the numbers or scenes that are going on, and Will Two's like, "Hey, I have a really good idea and plan in play right now. You just have to
Mhm.
go with it and wait for it to happen." And Will One's like,
Yep.
"Okay, Will Two. Okay."
Okay. So the second act of this whole drama, this whole theater scene is Tiny's running through all of his ex-boyfriends, which are 18 ex-boyfriends, and he does all of this so it's and then he gets to the big breakup scene on this swing set with Will 2, and Will's like, "I don't really remember this scene. I don't think I was that self-destructive or calling myself a hand grenade, but maybe." And
Yeah.
Tiny does make a bit of a oopsie, and he seems to be saying that depression just kind of happens and it's possible to be happy. And Will was not so stoked about this, but he's just gonna
Oops.
drive through with his plan anyways.
Yeah, and this ends up being like the final scene in the play too, because it's like Tiny like swings up from the swing set that's on the stage and like gets up into the rafters somehow. Again, I don't think John Green understands blocking or
He
David
was like
Levithan for that
holding
matter.
on to the rafters.
Yeah, and then it's like he's like yelling like, "My name's Tiny Cooper and this is my story." And I'm like, "So you're telling me Will 2 just showed up at the very like last number of this? Interesting."
Well, I read that differently.
Act
He
two.
made it for the second act because, like, they
Oh.
closed doors after Act 2 begins.
And then they waited.
But they
That makes
waited
sense.
until the big moment because Will 2's main goal of this whole book was to steal Tiny Cooper's show-stopping ending.
That's your
No,
interpretation.
I'm kidding. I thought it was rude that
I
he
mean, he
planned this to
does.
steal the
Yeah!
end. But so much of the last 2 chapters was kind of out there that I was
Yeah.
like, whatever, I
You're along
accept
for the
it.
ride.
But I have a lot written at the
Okay.
end that you are gonna love and hate.
Then let's talk about this ending, because so now Tiny Cooper is either like standing on rafters, hanging from rafters, talking about how he's like the writer and I'm the protagonist. This is, we don't know.
And so it seems like the end is like Tiny catapults off this swing set. He's like holding onto the rafters. Again, gymnastics. Doesn't really make any sense. And then he sings about how it's not about falling, but it's about landing in love. And the whole ending is just Will organizing, like unionizing all the Will Graysons in
Will
this
2
area off
did
of
this.
Craigslist to Will 2 did this, yes.
Yeah.
Not the first Will. And they all stand up after Tiny says that he is like deserving of love or something. He's like, this is my story. And they say, my name is Will Grayson and I appreciate you. All these random Will Graysons. One's really hot, shouts out his number. Good
Yeah,
for
they call him
Tiny.
Big God in
But
the
I mean,
book.
like Nick said, like you said, Nick, I mean, it's like it stole his whole play. And he like rewrote that. He stayed up breaking his mind over it.
Yeah, like, and you're ruining like the final moment of it. Like, you're ruining like the people who are working on this play. You're ruining it for the people in the audience who are like, what the fuck is going on? Why are there 100 Will Graysons here?
So I'm optimistic that this was the Friday show and that he had a Saturday show to get his ending at least. But you know, a little surprise on opening night, it's always going to happen.
Yeah.
From the audience, not so often,
Yeah.
but hey, actors, the show must go on. We all know this. So yeah, I'm just optimistic there was a second show.
Yeah, but that's like literally the ending. Like, no one takes their bows. There's no like final like Tiny moment of being like, I can't believe you guys did that or anything like that. It is literally just like,
Yeah,
and we appreciated Tiny.
We have no reaction from Tiny.
No!
He's either loving it
Or
or so mad.
Yeah, and it's also like, I feel
Yeah.
like this entire thing would have made more sense if Will 1 had organized it, but that like Will 2 dated him for a week and had to do this is a little weird. So
It is. Like you don't well, they dated for 4 weeks, 2 days and like 18 hours.
You're right, I forgot about that.
Actually to fact check you there.
Thank you,
But
Bestie.
it's still weird.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so that was just a little weird ending for us. It doesn't really feel like it was weird to have like a big grand gesture be the end and have it still feel so like empty and unfulfilling.
Okay.
Dude, they did the same
what?
thing with Looking for Alaska, where like in the Looking for Alaska prank, it was like they built it up for pages, and then we get to it and we're like, that's it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think also the fact that like this had no buildup. Like we didn't see anything about Will, like why he was doing this or why he had to organize this. So Nick,
Yeah.
what do you
I think it's time for my different opinion.
Okay.
If I may. So
Okay. Yes,
So one,
please,
there
the
was
floor is
plenty
yours.
of buildup. It was the whole freaking book because of Tiny's show.
Got it.
But
Mm.
the thing was, I don't have a quote here. I could be wrong, but I believe that when Will 1 and Will 2 are talking about Tiny right before they put the plan into motion, they do say nice things about him and kind of like how he is a good person. To me, I read it as Will 2 learned quite a bit from Tiny just because Tiny started to bring him a little bit out of his depression and show him that he can be, you know, a proud gay man, he can be a quiet gay man, he can be whatever gay man he wants to be, and that he will still be loved. And Will 1 especially realized that he needed to appreciate Tiny Cooper much, much more than he ever did.
Yeah.
So that's where I felt they came in with that, I'm Will Grayson and I appreciate you.
But that was also the day before the show. How would they have organized this within 24 hours?
Will 2 is a mathlete. and Gideon is a DJ.
That is true.
So they're
Yeah,
covering
you're
everyone
right.
in Chicagoland
Yep.
between those two
You're right, and
things.
I'm wrong.
But then I just wrote,
You're right.
very cute, happy ending. Will 1 is with Jane and delighted. Will 2 has made so much progress. Even if Tiny and him don't get together, he is
Aw.
happier and fuller, and so is Tiny, at least show-wise.
Yeah.
Be cute. Gotta end with Will Grayson shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say it's interesting that
Aw.
this book called Will Grayson ended up being so much about Tiny. There's like a little, I don't know if this is in your book, Meg, but at the back of ours there's like a little like kind of conversation with David Levithan and John Green. And apparently John Green created Tiny, and David Levithan was so excited because he was like, this is like a character that I would write. And so he was like, I just feel like we're already in the same headspace to write this book. And he became such a focal point because they just both liked writing Tiny as a character so much. So that's kind of where this book like led in a way that they weren't expecting, which I thought was a really cool thing to learn.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really sweet.
Yeah.
I love that John Green was like, "Ugh, please, I'm begging to be ableist and
Yeah.
No, okay, Tiny was a good character, but I will say he's got a weird thing about his fat jokes.
It's
Yeah.
weird. That is
And-
true.
and-
But John Green did also mention that like he had, as somebody who has a very basic name, he's met a lot of John Greens in his time. So he does kind of have a weird connection
Oh.
to this book.
Yeah. I
But-
can kind of get
Interesting.
that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I felt at the end Tiny Cooper was the protagonist the
That's
whole
so
story.
true.
Because both Wills, nothing would
Mhm.
happen if it weren't for kind of the planets that they orbited. They
Yeah.
were both moons. And Tiny was
They were both moons.
Mhm.
yeah, Tiny was a planet who really pulled both of those Will moons into his orbit.
Will Moon.
And I felt like helped them progress to be where they needed to go. So I really thought this story ended up being just so much more about Tiny and his effect on people than the Will
Yeah.
Graysons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is your favorite Will?
I think I like Will 2 more. I feel like Will 2 had a better arc in the story. And I also felt like
Yeah, I liked Will 2 more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Will 1 just because
Contrarian.
he really reminded me of how to be such an emotionally idiotic person at the age of 16. Like I
Aw.
related to that a ton. I loved Will 2. I loved his progress, but I
Yeah.
just couldn't relate as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was really relatable with how he I am speaked, and then also
Yeah.
I think at some point in the book I was like, oh, I can tell a gay man is writing this. So
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think
David
I liked
Levithan
him
is
for
gay.
that-
I don't know
that
if we led
matter.
with that, but David Levithan is a gay person, gay man. Am I saying that right? Gay
He
man,
is,
gay
which-
person?
I think you are. I think you're doing
Is that
a
is that
great
is
job.
that is that PC?
This is- I'm gonna bully you both into coming to my GSA, and I'm gonna set you guys up. Okay?
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. We can't wait.
Then we'll go to the bean.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to the bean.
Finally.
You'll go to
We've
the
never been to
bean.
the bean together.
Speaking of the bean, who is speaking of the bean, a character who should be canceled? Who is your canceled character?
Yeah, let's do our canceled character elects. Nick, as our guest, you get to elect the canceled character that you want to pitch. And if Maggie and I have counters, we will counter.
Okay, but like I just feel like it's too
Mhm.
easy. It's
It could
it's
be
Maura.
easy. It's got to be Maura.
Yeah.
A part of me wants to say like we could
Oh, for
cancel
sure.
the hideout because hindsight's 2020, but we can
Hindsight is
cancel Maura
2020.
because she sucks. She was awful.
Maura
She didn't even
sucked.
like she deserved to be ripped from the book. Like I really just wish Will to never talk to her at the very, very end.
Yeah.
But then
No,
that leaves us
I
with
agree.
our top 5 for this episode. We love our top 5. For this episode, we're going to do our top 5 additional Will Grayson screen names. IMing is a very big part of this book. Will Grayson 2 does change his screen name after the whole Isaac shenanigans. So we were thinking, hey, we could come up with even more screen names for any other time these guys need to change their screen names. I'll start with number 5 because I came up with this one and it wasn't very good. But the screen name of I Will Rock You, but with like a U lowercase instead of spelled out. It's snappy, it's short. It would work in a screen name fashion because both of their names are Will.
That's true.
Love it.
Yeah. Meg, you gotta get number
For number
4.
4, this was a joint effort
It wasn't?
on Nick and
That's
I's
true.
part. I think so for sure. So number 4 is going to be Grazing Grayson Moo Moo.
Yeah.
The Grazing Grayson, if you're wondering, the origin of it came from Nick's mind, and I wanted to slap on a little moo moo
Maggie did
just
a
to make
yes
it lovable.
and also would have been a different book if one of them was really into like farming or cows.
Or was a cow.
Or it was a cow.
Oh. Yeah.
Honestly, it doesn't say that they're both human.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, when you argue that way. So
It's tough.
Nick, you should say number 3 because you came up with that one.
All right, number 3. Well, oh yeah. Will you gray something?
Yeah.
We're gonna add another "you" there to save us on our characters. These screen names are limited, but this honestly came from me and the song "Say Something, I'm Giving Up on You," and I was looking for a way to throw gray into a screen name. So gray something. Will you gray something?
And then number 2,
Great.
coming in very hot since they made an appearance at the very beginning of the book. Actually, they didn't, but they were mentioned. Meg suggested this. We kind of spitballed on it. Neutral Wilk Hotel. That's a good screen name.
I think it's an incredible screen name.
Great. Meg, bring us home.
And then Hey, thank you. Number 1, since it seems like Will too, he had a lot going on. We want a screen name could be Will to Live.
And it's number 2.
I think maybe if you say it enough, if you say Will to Live enough and you see it enough, maybe you get it,
Exactly.
That, or at least you get your legal documentation done so that your family is not left behind.
It works both ways.
Exactly.
Well, awesome. That's gonna be it for this episode of Yeah, We Read It. Nick, we want to thank you again for joining us. And where can the listeners keep up with you or find you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so happy to be here. Yeah, we read it, finished my top 5 of podcasts last year, and I highly recommend to everyone
really sweet.
to listen to every single episode you can get your hands on, even if you haven't read the book.
This
You
is-
actually like it even more because it's just your friends telling you a great story.
And we have 94 episodes that you can listen to. So
Yeah, it's worth it. But yeah, you
Wow.
can find me at my Instagram @ is _Nick_Olson. And from there you can pretty much find me anywhere else I want you to find me.
we love it. Nick is also a musician
Fair
at
enough.
Nick_Ultro. You should listen to that too. But if you're trying to get in touch with any of our 94 episodes, this is our 94th episode. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you do, maybe rate and review us. That could be fun.
And if you want to follow us on Twitter and TikTok, we're at Yeah We Read It. And then on Instagram, we are at Maggie_and_Laura. And then if you want to send us an email, we are open to that too at maggieandlaurapresent@gmail.com.
And that's going to be it for this episode. We'll see you next week for our final John Green novel of the season. I can't believe we've made it, but it's going to be exciting. And thank you all for listening. We'll see you then.